doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
Ебать, 6 человек, но никто не погиб, все живые. Деда долго вытаскивали.
Into the WikiLeaks cables, all the diplomatic cables. These include the Kissinger cables from 1973 to 1976, the Carter cables, 1977, 1979, and Cablegate from 2003 to 2010. So this is missing the 1980s and the 1990s. But what I did is I ran a search for Soros and then separately searches for the Open Society Institute, the Open Society Foundation, the Open Society Forum. And my goal is to create a comprehensive tapestry of all U.S. State Department involvement with George Soros, the Open Society Foundation, the Open Society Institute, and every Open Society spandrel in every country in the world, to create a comprehensive picture of how it is, for example, that Strobe Talbot came to say in 1995 that U.S. foreign policy has to be synchronized. Deputy Secretary of State came to say it's not identical to the foreign policy of the U.S. government, but it's compatible with it. It's like working with a friendly, allied, independent entity, if not a government. We try to synchronize our approach to foreign policy with Germany, France, Great Britain, and George Soros. The magic sauce. And of course, Soros then turns around and is the #1 political donor. And so I began this task, and I'll start the story here. So I began this exercise by seeing all this stuff in 1973. 1973, 1974, 1975. You see, the entire first page is before 1979. So I skipped over it at first. I thought, oh, that must be a mistake. It's got to be a different Soros. So I started, because again, this leaves out the 1980s and the 1990s. So I really started my review at first from 2003 to 2010. And I'll show you some crazy shit. But then, when I was on my way stuck on the way from Miami to Portland, Maine, to do the Tucker thing, I thought, that is an awful lot of George Soros references before 1979. Maybe I should check a couple of them out. It didn't make sense to me, because 1979 is when the Open Society Foundation started. So that is when I had assumed the Soros relationship with the State Department. Why is Soros popping up in so many State Department cables before Soros even started the Open Society Foundation? And I'm about to tell you that story. And then we'll work our way up to Mongolia. The Mongolia story is one of the craziest stories I've ever heard in my life.
The what?
The counter proposals of the European, the counter plan of the Europeans.
I'm not aware of counter plan.
Can you point to
I haven't seen any counter plan. All right, guys.
the attitude of the Ukrainians during these negotiations?
Oh, it was very positive. I'm telling you, today was the most productive day
He said
we've
they were
had.
ungrateful earlier.
Well, today, and we've talked to him since, I think he's quite pleased at the reports we've given him about the amount of progress that's been made. But I can tell you, that I feel very optimistic we can get something done here, because we made a tremendous amount of progress
What are you
today.
gonna tell President
That the items that remain open are not insurmountable. We just need more time than what we have today. There are a couple issues that we need to continue to work on, but I think the report today is that I think today was worthwhile. It was very, very. It is probably the most productive day we have had on this issue, maybe in the entirety of our engagement, but certainly in a very long time.
Welcome back to the SCIF on this Monday morning. It's holiday week. We will be off on the SCIF from Wednesday until the next Monday. We need some well-deserved time with our family and to families and to recharge our batteries, because we've been going like crazy now pretty steadily for a long time. So we're going to take a little break and recharge and rework, and maybe you'll see some changes come next Monday. But that's the plan. I wanted to say hello to the crew in the chat already going. Thank you. All the regulars are chiming in. I love to see it. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Check out whatfinger.com if you want to see some good aggregation content. They post a lot of our stuff, and we enjoy speaking with them. The video in the beginning of the cold open was a Russian deuce and a half, which rolled over several cars in a winter accident. I'm not sure what happened there. The aspect on the video was wrong, but that's what that was. I'll play that again in a minute so you can see it. Media Week at the Pentagon, first week in December, we're going to be there. So I don't know how that's going to look logistically for the show. We will let you know when we get a little closer. Maybe we'll live stream there. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll do pre-records. Maybe we'll pre-tape and put the show out. But Monday, Tuesday, and likely Wednesday, during the showtime, we will be glad handing with Pete Hegseth and the rest of the crew. I understand we have lined up, I think, 18 interviews with different Pentagon officials, some serious ones. One of those is Matt Lohmeyer, our good friend, and also General Tata, which is the personnel guy. I'm really looking forward to that one. So we're going to have some really good reporting the first week in December, and then onward from the Pentagon, because we'll have a team member in the Pentagon at our cubicle, our desk in the Pentagon, going forward for the duration. So stand by for that. I don't know if we'll have a show this Sunday on the Georgia show or not. I got to talk to Bill Quinn. It's likely 50-50. Let's put it that way. But everybody needs a rest. We will not have a show Wednesday night on the Georgia show. We may run a best of. We probably will. We'll run a best of Wednesday night. And what else? There's a lot going on. We got a big show today. Mark Mitchell is coming on. The Honest Pollster. Rich Barris has been our pollster, but we love what Mark has to say as well. So we're going to have him on and talk about his recent trip to the White House. I find this fascinating, and I want to get it straight from the horse's mouth, as they say, on what Mark told the president and his team and what the response was and what their priorities are and what they're going to do to change, because I understand this was an emergency meeting to address the Trump political aspect against the youth vote, which isn't going so well, to be honest, right now. And the midterms are coming up, and I want to know about the elections. You know, we've heard a lot of talk about we got to get rid of the machines and go to paper ballots and end mail-in voting, but what's the status? Maybe we'll do a show on that. Maybe we'll do an election integrity show and start focusing on that more. I'm going to write myself a note right now, and we'll get that done in the next few weeks. And maybe we'll make that a regular occurrence as to what's happening in the election space, or maybe we'll have a segment here on the SCIF every week going forward on that. I think that's the best idea. We'll have I don't want to brand a whole new show, but maybe we'll have a segment on the SCIF to talk about elections as we move into 2026, because the midterms are coming. The information war has already started. They've gone after Trump heavily. He's taken a hit in the polls. We'll see what happens, but the machines are still there. The mail-in ballots are still there. The voter rolls are still dirty. You know, our estimation is that they let Trump win, but all the down ballots were adjusted in 2024, and they're going to do it again. So we will see. I got Mark Mitchell coming. It's going to be a great interview for this first hour. In the second hour, we're going to replay our interview with Roger Stone on Sunday in case you missed it on the JFK assassination. A lot of information to get through today. We'll go through some stories as well. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
I'm a naturopathic doctor. We are in the world of medicine very acquainted with many modalities, but probably the one most familiar with everybody would be two things: homeopathy and herbals or herbs, maybe some nutrients too, you know, vitamins, minerals, that kind of thing. Now, we do know a lot about the drugs because we have to find out what drug you're taking affects you and what nutrient it depletes you of, because most every drug pharmacy product will deplete something. So we have been trained and we have a database that we can check into that says this is going to take your B12 away. The pharmaceutical company cannot patent organic substances made by the body. You're not born short of Advil. You know, you're not born short of Ritalin.
Yeah.
You can be born short of insulin, right? Mm-hmm. The answers to staying healthy and keeping away from even SARS or any of those things getting into you is staying healthy.
Mm-hmm.
You and I get sick because our terrain gets out of balance. Well, that's the same thing in the soil. You and I are made from this thing called dirt. And when we get out of balance, we have the same thing happen. Weeds start to grow in our body. Right? And that's what we want in our body. We want nutrients that we don't understand how to get well enough yet because our suppliers are lacking knowledge on nutrient density foods.
So this is what drove you to develop this, was your knowledge of this, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. You know that.
Excited to announce that we're having a huge sale on overstock and brand new products. For example, My Pillow Percale bed sheets, every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. Our Percale bed sheets are breathable, cool and crisp, and they're perfect for spring and summer. And check out Rev 7, the next generation of energy drinks. It tastes great and it gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. Best of all, it's actually good for you. And for a limited time, try our 3-pack absolutely free. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88. Twin size, full size, queen size, king sizes, all $29.88. Inventory is extremely limited at this price, so order now.
Welcome back to the SCIF, the best intel brief out there daily, Monday through Friday, Eastern, 10 to noon. And we pride ourselves on our relationships. And one of those is the honest Pollster. And I see him in the green room, so I'm going to bring him in. Mark, thanks for joining me this morning, man.
Yeah, great to be back.
Yeah. You were just on, but you had a meeting and I want to hear about recently. Tell me how that went, my friend.
It was pretty wild. So I'm a Washington, D.C. outsider. I think that helps me kind of get the people a little bit more than most politicians in DC. It helps me be a pollster. And I've been sounding the alarm on a lot of things. The first most obvious one was Epstein, kind of a rug pull, you know, when you promise to drain the swamp and then you can't even stick the landing with that. And I got called a panicking, but I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I'm just an independent guy looking out for the voters. And now recently in the last couple of weeks, I think there was a pretty big wake up call after the Virginia and New Jersey elections and about, let's just say, the message discipline coming out of Trump, counter signaling a lot of the people in his base in a way that was sort of bad.
Yeah.
So I critiqued it online and it got some people's attention. So I went down there. I was invited to go down. And, I'm not the kind of guy that remembers all these details, but I was there for about 2 hours and I got to talk to JD, Susie, Marco Rubio, and Trump for like 45 minutes.
Wow.
And basically my pitch to them was, this is different than 2016. This is not a cult of personality and people are along for the Donald Trump being chaotic ride. This is, no, you have a much bigger big tent and people are really concerned about the direction of America and about your promises because they kind of need them now. It's like, it's like game day. And so my advice was, hey, like, let's be very clear about what the actual problems are because they're too big. I know he's done a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
But then to say, well, we're in the golden age now is not going to work. It's the same as Bidenomic gaslighting. And so I said, hey, be intentional about what the real problems are and show that the Republican Party can have a solution to them. Don't stop fighting them. Work with them to fix Americans' problems. Because right now the problem is that everybody thought that Donald Trump would come in and fix our real issues, very systemic issues. And he's like, not. I mean, we were going to drain the swamp and they had Doge and basically Doge is dead now. And that was the most popular thing that the youth ever saw in politics. And certainly all of the time I've been following it. So that, again, Donald Trump's numbers are pretty good from a job approval rating. He's at -4 today. That's not bad. That's better than every president going back to Obama 1 at this point in his term. But it's just not enough to get Republicans to win because Republicans are still like the party of DC, essentially, in big businesses and stuck in all of the existing establishment interests. And voters, especially the young voters, aren't going to turn out for Republicans anymore unless they get these systemic problems fixed. So I was there for a while. He signed hats for my kids, and it was wild, But
I saw your pic.
Well, go ahead. Yeah,
I was going to say I saw your picture near the auto pen, but
Yeah, I didn't get as many pictures as I wanted. It was kind of like a blitz tour. But JD was very gracious to have me down there. I think, I guess my biggest takeaway is that Trump is still very much in charge and he's still leading the way Trump does, which is listening to a lot of people and then shooting from the hip. But there needs to be a bigger strategy to address the fundamental problems we have. And I think that the White House administration is very open to that and understands that and knows that they need to do better at this, which is why you see other people going in. I think Posobiec was just there on Friday. I think you'll probably see more names. And, Trump, God bless him, he's surrounded by people like Lindsey Graham and Sean Hannity and a lot of billionaires like Larry Ellison. And one of my messages was, you have to fight the oligarchy. You can't be the oligarchy. Like, that's the absolute worst thing that you could do. So big, long conversations. And most of it was the stuff that's all been on my Twitter feed. I try to get across as much as possible. And, I think JD knows all this because we're talking about the middle class being hollowed out. Like, obviously you can't just snap your fingers and fix that. But then people say, well, how do you expect Trump to fix that? Well, there are things you can do. Like, Charlie Kirk knew this. He published a plan that, in my opinion, would it be the best economic plan for the billionaires in charge of America? No, it wouldn't. But it would be the best economic plan for voters under 50 who have been left behind by Republican and Democrat politics. And so there are plans that you could do that are very obviously would fix this. And it's like, hey, attack offshoring. Hey, like, cancel H-1Bs. You know what I mean? Like, work on policies that increase wage growth, because you're not going to be able to bring down groceries meaningfully for people. And so to have trackers to say, look, we're getting grocery prices down. It's like, no, those are symptoms of a bigger problem. It's maximum rent seeking. It's oligopoly. It's corporate welfare. It's all of these problems because of the way that all of these entrenched interests have been aligned for maximum rent seeking and to squeeze the last drop out of the American middle class. The system has worked very well for the billionaires.
Yeah.
They have to fix that.
So you were with, I don't want to say the dream team, but the power brokers. I mean, Rubio has a huge amount of power internationally. Susie Wiles is running the show, and Trump, I don't know how JD fits in. I think the president listens to him. But what was their reaction? Especially, I want to know what Susie Wiles has been driving a lot of this corporate allegiance. She used to work for Big Pharma. She was, I think, Netanyahu's campaign advisor. How do you see her reaction to all this?
So I'm not a politician, and I believe the
Yeah.
best in people until they show me
Yeah.
their worst side.
Mhm.
But I do think I have a good BS sniffer on me, and I
Mhm.
love Susie. I thought she was gracious and really nice,
Okay.
and really trying to understand the things I was saying, and I could tell that she'd had a good faith effort to, like, understand
To
some of the
listen.
stuff that I put out there. Yeah, and I think JD gets it. Like, he's not faking this economic populist side of him. I think he is a true economic populist, and people can say, "Oh, tech bro this, tech bro that." Well, you wouldn't you talk like the way he does. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
when I say the words like globo homo uniparty kleptocracy, he laughs because he fundamentally knows that that's the enemy.
Yeah.
So, and then also Rubio, very impressed with, really nice guy,
Yeah.
really relaxed, and he knows his job very well. He's an attack dog, and I love some of the stuff coming out of the State Department.
Mhm.
The sheer balls to tell the EU that we're watching you now, that we are looking at the negative impacts on Western civilization due to mass migration. That is really, really big. And that
We
just
need
came
more
out
of
this
that.
week.
We need more
Yeah,
of that. So
exactly.
much more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So again, I was very hopeful, and I don't think, like, clearly we know that there are interests that have, and I even went to the RNC, and everybody
Mhm.
says the Republican Party is controlled opposition. And I'm starting to try to, like, understand exactly what I think about that. And I don't think that's the case either. So again, people can call me a black pillar, but what I'm trying to do is show you the white pills.
Yeah.
And it is, DC is tough, and there are a lot of entrenched special interests. Everybody has a lobbyist except for the American voters. But I think the RNC is trying to also understand that, but it's so hard inside that bubble, and it's so hard with all of the organizational inertia that has kept them operating within a very confined envelope of, just to give you an example, I went and spoke at a event for the Conservative Partnership Institute, which my
Mhm.
understanding is that those are where a lot of the young based people are in Washington, DC. And I was very impressed. They were very receptive to my message, but almost every person there that had a Twitter account has protected tweets. And so they're maybe fighting for Americans in Washington, D.C., but they're not fighting in the info war. And I think it's because they're afraid still that conservative positions will affect their careers negatively.
Hmm.
So those things, that's just going to change. At some point, it's going to change. And maybe it'll take, I think the pendulum is swinging back to democratic socialism. That's really what I'm afraid of, because
Mhm.
I feel like, my feeling is that this was kind of like a last chance for the Republican Party, and they didn't really get that. They aren't really on board with
You
the
really
idea
think they
that they
didn't
needed.
get it, or they just didn't care? I mean, what do you think?
Well, it's
You're
like,
saying
who is
that.
they? There are
Yeah.
people that didn't get it, and there are people who don't care, and I'm not
Yeah.
sure which is which.
Yeah.
You go to the RNC, and it's like, well, these people are employees. They are trying to change things. Some of them are new employees. Like, I think Joe Gruder's only been there for months. So, like,
Mhm.
how much do you expect this guy to be able to get done? And it's like, okay, well, like, maybe he doesn't know. It's like, well, he's getting feedback that I've heard from grassroots organizations that aren't happy with the current state of the data capabilities coming out of the RNC. Well, it's like, okay, that probably needs to be fixed. But in his position with his resources, how much can he get done in 350 days? Like, I don't know.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, and then when you say they, it's like, okay, well, John Thune probably cares more about rules in the Senate than he does about most Republican voters. Probably, like, fundamentally deep
Mhm.
down, that's my perception. But I think, again, like, Mike Johnson probably cares more about the voters based on what I've seen, but is operating again in a very small envelope that is failing the American people. And
Wow.
so at the end of the day, how much is he going to be able to do? What I can tell you is that I've measured a signal that under 40 voters really don't care about the rules that much. And they don't
No.
care about the party that much either. And so there's a big opportunity for somebody to come in and break the rules and just take all the treasure. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
the
which is what
organization
Trump
that
was supposed to do, man. You know?
yeah, that's right.
Wow.
That's right. I follow a couple of younger influencers because I think it's important to have weather vanes because I see really weird results. Like, for instance, we have polled on under 40 voters specifically multiple times. And one of the question sets we just asked is, would you support or oppose giving control of legislation and governance to an advanced AI?
Hmm.
And it was like 41 to 49. Like they were pretty okay with it. But conservatives, it was 55 to 40. And it was actually the liberals that didn't want the AI control. Christians overwhelmingly wanted AI control.
Really?
Atheists overwhelmingly did not. And
Wow.
so what does even being a young conservative mean? They just want somebody to fix it. Like they
Wow.
literally, we had another question about Skynet. Would you support giving control of the world's military to an advanced AI to reduce deaths? And conservatives under 40 supported it 49 to 41, I think it was. 49 to 40, I think.
That's disturbing.
So, yeah, but I mean, can they be
Mhm.
blamed? Is
No,
it
I'm
better
saying
than
that
men
they
being
have
fed
been.
into a wood chipper in
Yeah,
Ukraine, right?
yeah.
So I don't know.
Wow.
It's a political ground. Like this is very crazy shifting alignments. People have talked about the horseshoe theory of politics. And what did you see this week? You saw people like Nick Fuentes embrace some aspects of Mamdani Democrat socialism.
Mhm.
And then you see people like Dinesh saying, ha ha ha, isn't it funny? Look at all the National Socialists. But it's like, and he could say, doesn't he know his history? And it's like, well, they can't buy a house, so they don't really care about history. Like,
They
you
can't
know what I
even
mean?
rent. They have to have
This
3
is the
roommates
problem.
just to get a
Oh, these
place.
young people, they're so
Yeah.
crazy. Why are they so stupid? Well, it's like, okay, you destroyed the education system. They're surrounded by Marxist propaganda. Their parents gave 1/3 of them SSRIs. Their dating system is hopeless. The odds are that if they get married, their crazy woman wife will divorce them and take the house. They get passed over by Indians and freaking HR feminist girl bosses. Corporate America doesn't want these people. And they're surrounded basically by a degenerate society, an online monoculture that their parents handed to them on an iPad at the age of 12. And yeah, so like you didn't teach them history, you taught them gay stuff. So like don't clutch pearls about National Socialists. You're going to get them. And the way to prevent that from happening is to actually have the answers as the Republican Party. And
Wow.
the Democrats at least have answers. The Democrats will give them a $10 trillion housing bill and it will destroy America, but it's an answer. The Republican Party's answer is we're just going to keep trying the stuff that we know doesn't work.
We're gonna send more troops overseas.
Yeah.
Um,
Thankfully, Trump, again, if they get this Ukraine thing through, hopefully it's like, okay, we've cleared the decks. We've wiped the slate clean. We can finally get Israel and Ukraine out of the news. Like that would probably be the best thing for him. And then after
Yeah.
that, if instead he did town halls with Americans or went on podcasts and just stopped getting on Air Force One, I think that would be better. It would be a good start. But then you still have this issue of like the Republican Party basically doing nothing, because I think they're going to get one more reconciliation bill through and then just go on campaign season, I think is
Yeah.
what's probably going to happen. They would be better served by not campaigning. I hope a Republican is listening to this. Your party should stay in session and pass laws. Even the ones you can't get through, make the Democrats vote against them. Vote against voter ID, vote against, all these things. And they're not going to.
Well,
but
you bring up voter ID in elections. Was there any discussion of that? Was there any realization that 2026 is coming? The machines are still in, the vote by mail fraud's still there, the voter rolls are still dirty. Any awareness of that at all?
I did.
You didn't go there, I guess.
I kind of did. So the message was, you're doing okay. Your approval numbers are okay. They could be higher. You shouldn't counter signal your base. but the Republican Party is seen as ineffective. Everybody hates the Republican Party. You're supposed to teach them to win, like work with them and teach them to win. Lay out a plan, like a contract for America. I called it the fight, fight, fight plan for America. I gave it like a couple of different branches. One of those branches is reform institutions. Like it's like you could say drain the swamp, but people expect something and they don't know what it looks like. In my opinion, what it looks like is people being walked out of the FBI on camera. And
Yes.
it's like, these are the people that spied on the mama bears, like
Yes.
stuff like that. And,
Yes.
and so I said, that was a very big part of what I said. I also said that people cared about the Epstein thing, and it was obvious that it wouldn't go away. And it was a symbol of two-tier justice. But as for the election integrity, I didn't bring it up too much because I've heard rumors that there's, not from my White House trip, but from other people, that there's actually things going on behind the scenes. And I'm not divulging anything here, but it's like these are people who have talked about this and who understand that there are people working in the White House on this very specific issue. And I can only assume that the stuff that is odd that we're seeing coming out of Dominion and Venezuela are related and tied to this. And there are people who have, I don't follow this, I haven't read the book yet, but there are people who have alleged that that's the case and that it is a Chinese influenced foreign U.S. voting system cheating situation.
Yes.
And that accountability is coming on that. I hope it comes soon. The only, now that I think about it, the only time election integrity came up is he was talking, Trump, he talks about a lot of stuff that's it's just like whatever's going around him that day. And it was like, hey, I just had a golf outing with Lindsey Graham and I like hanging out with him and he's so great at golf. And I was like, oh, come on.
Geez.
You know what I mean? But like, it was a good story to hear. But he was talking about the people he golfs with, and he said Brett Baer. And I was like, sir, why would you still golf with Brett Baer? And he's like, well, what do you mean? He's a good golfer or something. I forget what he said. But I said, well, a lot of people think that he helped steal your election. And personally, I turned off my cable subscription on November 3rd, 2020, and never forget it. I haven't watched Fox News since.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, the cheating was terrible. Like, we got to get to the bottom of that. I was like, yeah, we do. So.
But I have a golf game with Brett next week. Oh my. Well, I'm glad you got to the accountability. That is huge because if they don't fix the elections and show some accountability, I mean, there is no chance, even if they come close in the actual tallies of the vote, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, the president of Rasmussen, Ted, who posts on the main account, follows the election integrity stuff a lot closer than I do. But we have measured fraud in polling. We have measured fraud. We found repeatedly in multiple polls that between 2 and 9% of the electorate who says they're likely voters and who says they voted in the 2020 election are not U.S. citizens. And is some of that people lying and not reading the poll? 100%. But it's also people who have voted in elections. And it's impossible to know how many, but we should be looking at that, and nobody is. And then we heard that of the people who, across the battlegrounds in the 2020 election, at least 20% of battleground voters received at least one additional mail-in ballot. And it was 18% of the entire country. That's a lot of extra mail-in ballots. And then in a separate poll, of the people who said they voted by mail in the 2020 election, which was a lot of them, like 30-40%, 28% of them committed at least one form of fraud by their own admission out of a list of 4 different options we gave them of fraudulent ways of voting by election. So that's also a lot of fraud. And it's like, okay, well, we don't believe polling. It's like, okay, well, it's like, it could have been 20%, it could have been 30%. But the point is that nobody has tried to prove us wrong. Like, they could literally just run their own poll and ask the exact same questions as us and see if we were right or wrong. And nobody has. And they've basically ignored that reporting. And every time I say it to people, I did say those numbers to Trump. He's like, whoa, like, I mean, there's an acknowledgement that the 2020 election was completely stolen. We know he said it many times.
Yeah.
But the window for drastic accountability, I think, is closing. And what I think is going to be bad for the country is that I've heard rumors that the Democrats are working on fervently, not from my trip, from other people. And I'm not a DC insider, so I assume that if I'm hearing it, a lot of people are hearing it and knowing it, is that there is a committed effort behind the scenes to build many, many anti-corruption cases of people in the Trump administration. And I can only assume that those are either being waited on until either the 26 midterms, when Democrats are most likely to gain control of Congress, or maybe, I don't know, you got this new leftist AG going in Virginia, and like that could be a problem too. Maybe you start see state cases being filed against these people. And so I hope it's not like a war of political weaponization attrition. It would be good to sort of preempt that with actual like justified arrests, but I don't know.
Did you get any sense of what the impediment there is to doing that?
Nope.
Yeah.
I got frustration at Pam Bondi, and like basically that's it. So,
well, I mean, Wiles and Bondi are tight. They work together at Mercury or Ballard.
Well, yeah, my advice to these people, not personally knowing the judicial system very well, but understanding public opinion, is that you should just arrest a person a day. And it's like, well, if the case doesn't stick, that's fine. Just get the evidence out.
Yeah, exactly.
Do it yesterday, And again, people were on board with massive firings out of the FBI, the IRS, the DOJ, the DOD. Like, people were okay with that as long as you explain the tie-in to corruption and fraud. It's like, okay, well, these are the people that conducted Arctic Frost. These are the people that persecuted J6 people. Where's the J6 commission? I can tell you on day one, the Democrats are going to put an Epstein commission back in place when they gain control of the 120th Congress. So where's the Jan 6 commission that was supposed to right the wrongs of the previous one? I think everybody, and again, these are things that if I polled, you'd get mixed signals on. And yet at the same time, people are mistrustful of their government. And well, it's because there are things like this where there's been a vacuum of leadership and there's been cognitive dissonance. So at the end of the day, I mean, public opinion polls are important, but you also have to understand the root causes and address them. And like H-1Bs is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Everybody likes the H-1B program. It's like 65-30 or something like that. It's super popular. Well, that's because most people in the country don't work in the technology industry. They don't know how bad it is. And so they believe the propaganda that we're bringing over the world's best and brightest. But then if you ask them, well, do corporations scam this program? They say yes, like 48-38. Only 38% of Americans think that companies actually need all this talent. And then if you ask them, well, do you agree or disagree with Laura Ingram's quote that we shouldn't flood the country with third world workers or whatever it was, right? That's agreed to by like a 2-to-1 margin, like 60-30 roughly. And so if you understand corporate America, they've been hollowing out the middle class. This is a bigger impact for sure than illegal immigration, 100% bigger impact. And we've offshored, probably 10 million white collar jobs, and we've onshored another probably 5 million like super high paying jobs. This isn't picking avocados. This is like 150K base salary developer in Silicon Valley.
Truck drivers.
Like at the low end. Yeah. Not truck. This is like some of these guys are making 600K annual total compensation in a job that should have gone to somebody who was born in America, went to an American school, got in because we don't have Chinese visas here. So, and so it's like if you talk to Larry Ellison, he's probably not going to focus on how every single Fortune 500 company is using H-1Bs with both hands and both feet. And so even the Trump administration came out and put in a very good policy about H-1Bs. And everybody's like, whoa, like his base was like, oh, this is awesome. Like feed it into my veins. But then it's like for Trump to counter signal it 2 weeks later, there's no acknowledgement that this was a major blow to the thing that is oppressing America. Like this is going to reverse the core issue. These things will stop suppressing wages. That's the problem. It's not turkey prices. It is the stagnating middle class because corporations suppressed wages. And so just hug the problem. It's a big problem. Wage, there has been a wealth inequality. I said this 2 months ago, 3 months ago. The Republican Party should be laser focused on wealth inequality because the Democrats are. and not the
What
stock
was
market.
what was the reaction to that H-1B speech? I mean, or did you give the speech, or did you get a reaction, or was it just stone face?
Well, I didn't really talk about H-1Bs in the White
Okay.
House, but I think JD knows this stuff. But I mean,
Uh-huh.
again, they already came out against H-1Bs. What I was saying is like, hey, acknowledge the deeper problem
Mm-hmm.
that youth under 50, but people under 50 have no future. And I talked about median homebuyer age, and there was like kind of like a response that was like, well, people are really protective of home values. It's like, I know your friends are because
Mm-hmm.
they run Blackstone. Like, I get
Yeah.
that, you know what I mean? But it would be the best thing. And I brought up that a lot of people were talking about a controlled detonation in the housing market back in the spring. There was a really palpable feeling online of everybody saying, all right, great, Trump's got this. When are we crashing the house of cards, because we need to get it going again before the next election? And you know, it didn't happen. So and that would be wealth transfer. But right now, a lot of wealth is being transferred because, again, a lot of this, in my opinion, we've talked about the fourth turning, is that this handover of a core value set of older voters. Most of the people elected in, you know, Congress and the Senate are boomers or silents. You know, there's only 14% millennials in the Congress or Senate, and they're clinging very hard to this sort of like, the left has given up on sort of your centrist, pragmatic Democrat Bill Clinton, and they're embracing Democrat socialism. The right is very much clinging to like William F. Buckley and Art Laffer, and trickle down economics doesn't work, and they don't want to address that because
not when you're in an unfair system, for sure, where you have
100%.
You know,
so Trump is still out there talking about corporate tax cuts. We had a biggest corporate tax cut in America. It's like, again, you're not going to get rebellion, but you're going to get on that, but you're going to get this pervasive, like, people don't trust the corporations even more than they don't trust the federal government. It's like 25% trust big corporations roughly in America. And so it's again, this cognitive dissonance of not really addressing the problems and trying to gaslight them away with tweets coming out of the White House that we're in a golden age. It's like, no, you haven't given America the golden age yet. Don't take this is like Bush saying mission accomplished. That's what this is. So,
well, yeah, you know, Tucker has done a lot on the boomer issue and just saying how they're just obsessed with their own problems and not really thinking about the follow-on generations. And I completely agree with that. Let me ask you, was there any awareness or acknowledgement or understanding that the focus internationally, let's say, is not appreciated as opposed to focusing domestically?
I can't remember what was portrayed. Yeah, I can't remember what I was portrayed to Trump. I definitely remember saying, smash the oligarchy, don't be the oligarchy. And people are upset at big corporations. And when you surround yourself by them and like wealthy and powerful people, that it's not sticking, right? But I do specifically remember Marco asking me like, well, how am I doing? And you know, and I said, well, personally, I think a lot of the stuff you're doing are absolutely great wins, but it's about the message discipline of tying it back to what we're trying to do domestically, because we do have polling that definitely says, especially the young people, that there isn't enough focus on domestic policy and the economy. But that's like kind of obvious. Like that people, again, people will say the economy is the number one issue in almost every election, right? But then when they say that only 27% of them say that today's children will be better off than their parents, that's the clue that there's something bigger going on, right? And that's the clue that we're in a crisis. And the under 40s are saying that housing prices are a crisis. I think it was like 75 to 13 or something like that. And so when you look at places like New Jersey, if the under 40 voter wasn't voting in that election, Chitterelli had a chance. Like in my polling, he was winning with voters over 40. It's these under 40 people that don't care about the Republican platform that are in a crisis situation, and nobody in Washington, D.C. understands that or is looking out for them.
Last question. You mentioned Doge. Any feedback on why that was ended, or what is it actually working in other agencies, as they say, or what do you think?
So one of the things I say a lot is like, it doesn't matter unless you get credit for it. And what that means is that doing stuff is just as important as messaging it. And I'm not saying like, hey, message stuff you're not doing. That's lying. and that's bad. And or gaslighting or whatever. It's like, no, we're not in a golden age yet. When and I think we'll know this because the problems with the academic institutions will go away. People blame our schooling, for instance. Oh, look at all these people, they can't read and blah, blah, blah. But I believe in values being pulled and not pushed. And so if corporate America had to employ Americans and really needed talent, they would get their talent and the schools would get better. And so we like, that's what we'll see when a golden age happens. It's like, you know, the system has been changed fundamentally. And so from a Doge perspective, part of the reason that Doge was so effective was it was restoring people's trust in institutions. Like here's a predicate that you could use to clean everything up. It was like literally a panacea. It's all you had to do was give Doge access to every organization, and whether they fixed everything or not, they would have fixed enough that people would have been like, okay, now I have a reason to trust the IRS again. And so when you kick Elon out of it, and when you suppress all news about Doge, and when you get the one big beautiful bill passed that didn't cut anything as Doge was sort of being like sidelined, then it looks like subconsciously to people that the swamp has won. And now what you have people like Ron DeSantis taking advantage of that. He's being very wise. They're going to start running on Trump's perceived failures. And whether he's like fixed these organizations or not, I don't think he has, but whether he's fixed them or not, he's not getting credit for it because you have Ron DeSantis posting about Doge today. And he's right to do it.
No, it's a great strategy. I see a lot of that. You know, you could even put Marjorie Taylor Greene in that category. Whether or not her agenda is real, what she's saying is right. So, you know, we'll see.
Yeah.
Anything else, Mark, you want to get out? I really appreciate your time, man. Really insightful.
I mean, that's basically it. Most recently, just today, we have so many stories that underscore this. The complete and utter collapse of Israel public opinion is one of the big harbingers of a major political seat change. And just watching it, how the Republican Party is going to try to deal with that is wild, because you're having like Ted Cruz run for president now, and this is going to be his single issue. And so there's going to be this massive circular firing squad on the right, even though J.D. Vance, according to the polling, is the heir apparent. So all the money being spent to run against him, I will assume, is all special interests basically trying to reassert themselves over the Republican Party and muddy the waters for the 2028 run. And, you know, it's gotten to the point where when we ask in the political tracking question, who do you support more, Israel or Palestine? Israel went from plus 42 to plus 6, and it did it all with its own public relations failures. And right now, unfortunately, the only sort of like territory they have left is the Republican Party, and they're still reasserting that. And it's wild because for voters under 40, they don't hate Israel. They just want somebody to fix the system. And when you have foreign interest, corporate interest, any interest other than the voters, they're going to see it now because they're glued to the internet 24/7. So it's going to be really wild the next year or two, major political realignment. And unfortunately, the Democrats, even though all of their leaders are horrible, and even though they just got a major defeat, they look like they're kind of on the best footing to weather this, because at least they've leaned into something that, again, has a viable path forward. Will it destroy the country? 100%. But maybe not for 10 or 20 years. I don't know. So, at Honest Pollster on Twitter. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, Huckabee, if there ever was a flashing, you know, red light in Walmart, I mean, that was it, man. Him meeting with Pollock. And are they aware of how bad that freaking looks? I mean, you probably weren't there for that, but
well, I mean, I don't think it matters to them.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to see people pushing Sarah Huckabee Sanders on JD as like a potential. They're going to say, we really need a woman. Well, I know from people who lived in Arkansas that her run for governor was basically all about Israel, which is kind of weird because it has nothing to do with Arkansas. And then again, I'm not making, you know, opinions about Israel here. I'm just saying that the voters' interests should come first. And what do you also see out of Arkansas is some of the very first and most pioneering election integrity movements, like Colonel Conrad Reynolds pushing paper ballots for the very first time in the country in a county in Arkansas. And what happened is the Republican Party brutally came after them. The Republican Party of Arkansas, including a Sarah Huckabee Sanders appointed Secretary of State, is trying to throw him in jail right now. And then you look at Georgia and it's like, okay, they're still holding on to the ballots. And, you know, I just tweeted about this morning. I hear from inside Georgia that the party has been completely, co-opted by Governor Kemp, who runs the Republican Party of Georgia with an iron
Completely, we
fist.
know a lot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and why? Well, he has presidential aspirations. Somebody asked me about that and said, well, there's no way Kemp will ever win national office. And I said, well, I know that, but Governor Kemp's bank account doesn't know that.
And the machines don't know that. In Florida, I tell you, it's just as bad. You mentioned DeSantis. The election fraud down there is off the charts. And it's being run from the top down. And, I can show the data on that. Mark, thank you so much, man. I really enjoyed that. Was looking forward to hear what you had to say. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, great to be here. Check me out at Honest Pollster.
Excellent. Everybody, please go follow him. Take care, guys. See you after the break.
Celebrate our newest launch, Rev 7. I'm bringing you an amazing introductory offer, plus an exclusive overstock sale that you're not going to want to miss. Rev 7 is our premium energy drink that tastes great and gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. That's because there's no sugar and no caffeine. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7 that for a limited time you can try our 3-pack absolutely free. Or check out our per kill bed sheets. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our per kill bed sheets, all sizes only $29.88, even the queens and kings. Inventory is extremely limited, so order now.
Pandemic, we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. Stores were shut down and doctors' offices were shut down. And even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah, we'll give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah. Oh, the men will cheer, the boys will shout, the ladies, they will all turn out and will all...
Welcome back to the SCIF. Let's run through a few stories here that you need to know about. Levant Christians slam Trump policy in Lebanon, Middle East as Sunni supremacy. We've talked about this before with Tom Barrack, who is the Trump envoy to Lebanon. And we said it a while ago that they're essentially throwing Lebanon to the Sunnis, just the Christian population be damned. We don't like that. We're going to continue to speak up for Christianity in the Middle East, and our reporting on that will continue. So please check out this article on CDM. Let's look at this one. I'm an old rotor head, and when Army Aviation buys more special operations helicopters, that catches my attention. A new buy of MH-47 Golf aircraft. These are air-refuelable glass cockpit special operations platform, just like what we used to fly back in the Air Force, the MH-53J. So we have a soft spot for Army Aviation, especially soft aviation on AFP. So you can check out that article there. Then this is a big one. Israel bombed the Shia sector in Beirut. I was just there. I drove through the Shia sector. All the old buildings that were destroyed in the recent war with Hezbollah in the south are still destroyed, and this happening again. We have a video on there, and we have some of Huckabee's comments. Ambassador Huckabee, Bannon calls him a clown. I don't disagree. There is real worry with his words that on Christianity, that to be a good Christian, you have to do something else and support another religion. So we don't find that acceptable. We think that the faith calls for doing certain things, and it's not about supporting other religions, Ambassador. So check that out, the article, and some of the Christian comments that they feel really vulnerable in Lebanon because they're getting bombed and they really have no say or backing or any way to prevent it. And it just leaves them feeling very insecure with millions of Sunni refugees in the country. We're continuing to call this out, but you can find the article on cdm.press. Another big one that I want to highlight is the Sarajevo Safari, which is a kind of a narrative that has been coming out over recent days to try to get rid of Serbian President Vučić. It's a color revolution inside Serbia to try to get rid of him. He's not following the EU line. He's worked with the EU on certain things, but he's not, now that they don't need him anymore, they're trying to get rid of him. And this Sarajevo Safari, of the narrative that they were shooting people back in the day in the Balkans for sport on the Muslim side is not true, and it's been recycled many times over the years. So you can check that out on our paper, thebalkan.press. This is our paper in the Balkans. We have 7 domestic papers, 3 international, plus CDM Espanol military, and then CDM.press. Let me just bring up that paper, thebalkan.press. It's an important one, and it's going to have more writing because we're building up the staff there. All these papers have a lot of potential, and we need to build them out to what they can be, but we have a lot of non-globalist writing on the Balkans. So if you're interested in that area, check it out. And then last but not least, I wanted to let you know we have a sale going on with the Wellness Company for Black Friday. And we will be doing some live reads over the next few days. Well, tomorrow's our last live show until the next Monday. But check out cdm.press and go to twc.health/CDM. Use promo code CDM on Black Friday, and they're going to have some major sales. So check that out. We're going to take one more break because we went long with Mark. We'll come back and we'll run Roger Stone. So stay with us.
Watching my friends gain more and more weight, and then eventually I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke, I mean, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You are not conscious of this. But that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition-specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mixed it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition. And sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this. You take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back. Cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, an investment advisory practice. I've been an advisor for nearly 30 years, and one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, do I have enough money relative to other people my age? And while that's an interesting question, it's also the wrong question. The right question is do you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? This is a question you should know the answer to. This is what we do. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big proud American Eagle logo.
We have put flowers slogging over Africa. Foot, slogging over Africa. Boot, moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. 7, 6, 11.
Welcome back to the SCIF. We'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. with a live show on Tuesday, but Wednesday through Sunday we'll be off. We'll be back live Monday through Friday Eastern, 10 to noon on the SCIF, your best intelligence brief out there. Our guests are off the charts. Just had an amazing episode with Mark Mitchell, the honest pollster. Really insightful after his meeting with President Trump. So that's the kind of guests we get here, and it's day after day. People love the show because of our guests. We're on podcast, any provider. We're on Gettr, X, Rumble. We load the show on YouTube afterwards. We're streaming across a bunch of different X channels. So you can find us anywhere. Put us in your daily scan, cdm.press. We are the new wire service, global wire service. We have reporters all over the world, and we're up all night bringing you the stories you need to know that you may not even know you need to know. We're not just like everybody else. We're unique. We have reporters on the ground, like in Beirut, like in the Eastern Europe, like in the Middle East, etc. So that is our axe. It's what sets us apart. So a few housekeeping items on sponsors. MyPillow.com. Christmas is coming. Go to Mike's site, play around, look at all the different products he has for Christmas for your family. Get your gifts there. If you have a new kid that has a new apartment, needs to be outfitted or whatever, go to MyPillow.com. Use promo code CDM. You'll get the best discounts. The mattress topper is my favorite, but everything there is fantastic, high quality. So MyPillow.com, promo code CDM. Nucleo Boost, CDMnutrition.com. That's CDMnutrition.com. The best. This is the capsule form. This is the powder, which I use when I'm home. On the road, I use the capsules. Everything you need in one pill or one scoop in your yogurt or smoothie to get the nutrition at the cellular level that you need, and you'll be able to fight off disease as it comes. Fill the potholes in your body. Go to cdmnutrition.com. Get the monthly subscription. It's much cheaper. And then finally, if you are in need of a financial advisor, David Cross is fantastic. We've had just great feedback from everybody who's dealt with him, our viewers. He's not a high pressure salesman. He'll walk through your portfolio, either if it's retirement is a big one to help you plan, death in the family, divorce, sale of a business, estate issues, whatever. Talk to David. He's the guy. US Asset Management at us-am.com. And just give him a call. Have a great conversation. Tell him you heard about him on CDM. He's a patriot. He will take care of you. I guarantee you that. And he's been very good to a lot of, even some of our family. So we have a lot to say good about David Cross at usassetmanagement.com. Just look him up. You can find him on the cdm.press website on one of the ads there. It's always on the homepage. So with that, we're going to play now our interview we did Saturday with Roger Stone. He called me like it's JFK anniversary. I want to do something with you today. So we did a good overview of what happened in that whole thing. So I'm going to play that now. Hope you enjoy it. Let me get to the right thing. Hold on. We'll get there. There it is. Here we go. For our first Saturday special, we may be doing this more often as certain things come up, but today is a special day. It's the anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, right before I was born, but there is a good friend of the show who was alive during that time, Roger Stone. I'm going to bring him in now because he's got a lot to say about this. Roger, thanks for coming on, my friend.
Delighted to be with you on what for me is still a very sad day. It was 62 years ago today that John F. Kennedy was shot and killed on the streets of Dallas, Texas. And yet today, despite what I think are Herculean efforts by Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna and the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, we still don't have the complete truth and the complete record of who killed John F. Kennedy and why. In 2013, I wrote a book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ. Now, I do not make the case in this book that Lyndon Johnson acted alone. The case I make is that he was the man with the greatest single immediate interest in the death of Kennedy. You see, Lyndon Johnson was under investigation in two of the biggest scandals of the 1960s. The Bobby Baker scandal, in which the Secretary of the U.S. Senate, his right-hand man, Bobby Baker, was taking bribes on behalf of Johnson, and the Billy Sol Estes scandal, which is a scandal in which Billy Sol Estes, a flamboyant Texas wheeler dealer, had been kicking back to Johnson for enormous multi-million-dollar agricultural contracts that Johnson had gotten him from USDA. So Johnson knew that Attorney General Robert Kennedy had already begun telling people LBJ will be dropped from the 1964 ticket and he's going to prison. It was Lyndon Johnson who lured Kennedy to Texas, ostensibly for the purposes of binding up the divisions between the more liberal, progressive left wing of the Democrat Party, headed by U.S. Senator Ralph Yarborough, hated enemy of LBJ, and the other wing headed by Texas Governor John Connally, later switching to become a Republican, and the Treasury Secretary for Richard Nixon, the man who talked Nixon into abandoning the gold standard, interestingly enough. It's interesting that on the night before the assassination, Johnson went to Kennedy's hotel room and tried to change the seating in the motorcade to put Senator Yarborough in the death car with Kennedy and put his crony, John Connally, who had been Vice President Johnson's administrative assistant in the U.S. Senate when he was the majority leader, in the car with Johnson. Kennedy refused. I also now am intrigued by this recent documentary by Paramount entitled What the Parkland Doctors Saw. It's a compelling film in which multiple doctors who are still alive and who attended John F. Kennedy on the day of his murder said that they saw wounds in Kennedy consistent with his being shot from the front and the back. Well, that means multiple shooters, and that, of course, means a conspiracy. So to this day, we still don't have all the answers. President Trump's order to the National Archives to release all the information was very good, but it wasn't broad enough because much of the information at the CIA, at the FBI, at U.S. Army intelligence, at the IRS, and in other branches of government were never turned over to the National Archives. And therefore, Anna Paulina Luna, who's a hero in my belief, has had to go after all those agencies individually to collect more data. So, for example, they finally forced the CIA to hand over the files on a man named George Joanides. Joanides, if you look at the documents, was Lee Harvey Oswald's handler. The CIA denied for decades that they had no previous knowledge of Oswald, but in fact, they were tracking him. They were intercepting all of his correspondence by U.S. mail, and he was, in essence, Oswald's handler. A couple other key points here. We do know, based on the doctors at Parkland, that there were multiple shooters, but the shooter from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository building is a man named Malcolm Mac Wallace. How do we know this? Wallace left his fingerprints on the cardboard boxes that formed the so-called crow's nest from which they tell us Oswald shot. Know that they're his fingerprints because Mac Wallace was indicted in 1951 for first-degree murder when he shot and killed a man who was blackmailing U.S. Senator Lyndon Johnson. We also know that at least 6 witnesses saw a man who met the physical description of Malcolm Wallace in the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository building just before the shooting. Every one of them says a medium-build man, balding, wearing glasses. They all each say that he was wearing a tan jacket and light-colored slacks. 3 of those witnesses were incarcerated in the county jail, which is directly across Dealey Plaza from the Texas School Book Depository building. The other 3 witnesses saw this from the ground. None of this is in the Warren Commission report. All of it can be found in the records of the Dallas Police Department. A man named Nathan Darby, who was one of the most respected fingerprint experts in the country, identified the fingerprint found on the cardboard box on the 6th floor as that of Malcolm Mac Wallace. Wallace, at the time of the shooting, was a U.S. Agriculture Department employee in a patronage job arranged for him by Vice President Lyndon Baines Johnson. So I have little doubt that there's multiple shooters, but Malcolm Wallace is the shooter from the 6th floor. There's a little more proof of this. A man named Loy Factor, who's a Native American, came out with a book after the Kennedy assassination in which he said that he had been shooting at a county fair outside of Dallas, and he won the shooting prize for his marksmanship. And that Malcolm Wallace approached him afterward and said, "Give me your phone number, son. I may have some work for you." Almost a year later, Wallace contacted Factor, who was driven to Dallas and brought to the Texas School Book Depository building, where Factor said he was the backup shooter. In other words, if Wallace lost his nerve or was shaky, that Factor would take the shot. Why should we believe Factor? Here's why. He accurately describes the layout of the room, including saying, oh, there was construction going on, and there was a flat saw directly to the right of the window from which the shots were fired. There is no other way for Loy Factor to know that. Now, the other fact we know here is that the FBI wrapped up their investigation into the Kennedy assassination in 7 days flat. They claimed Lee Harvey Oswald, acting alone, lone nut, Russian communist sympathizer, 3 shots, all from the back. They handed it off to the Warren Commission and told them just to essentially rubber stamp it. And that's what Arlen Specter, then the chief investigator, I think deputy counsel of the Warren Commission, did. There was one problem. There was a man named Teague, and he was a car dealer, had gone down to Dealey Plaza to see the presidential motorcade, James Teague, pardon me. And while he was watching it, a bullet hit the curb next to where he was standing, and a fleck of cement grazed his cheek, and he began to bleed. This was seen by a deputy from the Dallas County Sheriff's Office, who said, we need to go in immediately and report this to the Dallas police. They took Teague to the police. He filled out a report. He knew a bullet had hit near his feet on the curb. He expected a follow-up from the FBI, but he heard nothing.
Yeah.
He continued to hear in media, radio, television, newspaper, 3 shots, only all from the back. But he knew there was a 4th shot. When he returned to the exact spot, the nick in the cement on the curb had already been patched in 24 hours. The only reason we know about this is that Teague had a few drinks, went into a bar and started telling the story to others, and he was overheard by James McNair, later of the Lear McNair report, and he was then an AP reporter, and the next day it became a national story. Mysterious 4th bullet found in Kennedy assassination. This is why Arlen Specter had to invent the magic bullet theory, the idea that one bullet hit both Governor John Connally and then hit President John F. Kennedy. Completely and totally false.
Wow. So I think there's a lot more to come out on this. What are your what's your future telling of what's going to happen with the rest of this information?
Well, the good news, of course, is that Anna Paulina Luna has subpoena power, and she's been backed very effectively by Tulsi Gabbard in their efforts to learn more. I have not seen anything in the material that has been released that contradicts my belief that Lyndon Johnson is the key perpetrator. Now, the JFK researcher community is very divided. There are those who say, no, it was the CIA. And then there are others who say, no, it was organized crime. Yet others say that it was financial interests. Remember, Kennedy and his brother were backing a silver-backed dollar, very unpopular with the financial interests. Big Texas Oil also has a role in this. D.H. Byrd, who is a crony of Lyndon Johnson, was the man who owned the Texas School Book Depository building. He was so happy about the murder of Kennedy, he had the window casing removed and put in his living room as a trophy. Jeez. You can't make this stuff up.
Wow.
Now, very recently, an audio surfaced of Cliff Carter talking to Billy Sol Estes, the Johnson protege and associate I discussed earlier, in which Cliff Carter, the executive director of the Democrat National Committee, says on the tape to Billy Sol Estes that Lyndon Johnson hired Mac Wallace to kill John Kennedy. And you can't blame Lyndon because of the way that the Kennedys mistreated him. This audio went public several months ago. I played it on my radio show. I think Alex Jones actually broke it, but it completes the circle here. But once again, what I'm telling you is Lyndon Johnson has the most unique and I think urgent motive, because he knows that on November 23rd, Drew Pearson, who is the most influential syndicated columnist of his day, has a column accusing Johnson of taking a massive bribe for a General Dynamics defense contract. That's the beginning of the end. After Kennedy's murder, that column, which has already been distributed to the newspapers who carry it, is spiked. Secondarily, however, Lyndon Johnson, as the Senate Majority Leader, takes the very unusual step of appointing himself to the subcommittee of defense appropriations, where the CIA's black box budgets, their secret budgets, are prepared. He's the paymaster for the CIA. His next door neighbor, Lyndon J. Edgar Hoover, knows that the Kennedys plan to retire him under the mandatory retirement rules, which can only be waived by the president, in 1964. Lyndon Johnson's daughters, not terribly attractive, refer to him as Uncle Edgar. So I don't believe that the FBI was an active plotter. I think Hoover's position was, you can try this, Lyndon. If it works, I'll cover it up. If it doesn't work, I might come arrest you. So
there's another motive that you touched on, but right after this was the Gulf of Tonkin incident. You mentioned defense contractors. There's a big war push motive for this too, right?
Enormous. Kennedy has very clearly begun to understand that our adventures in Vietnam are not likely to be successful. He had visited Vietnam as a college student, and I think he was starting to have his doubts about Vietnam. But a far greater motive was what the CIA believed was his bungling of the Bay of Pigs invasion in Cuba. Now, the Bay of Pigs invasion was first planned under President Eisenhower under a task force that was chaired by Vice President Richard Nixon. But the original plan for the invasion of Cuba had two conditions. One, it was supposed to look like an indigenous Cuban uprising. It was supposed to look like it was done by Cubans, not by the United States. And the men storming the beaches at the Bay of Pigs were supposed to have air cover from 29 Panamanian flagged bombers flown by Cuban pilots out of Panama. The day before the invasion, the number 2 man in the CIA, Charles Cable, whose brother Earl Cable just happens to be the mayor of Dallas and a crony of Lyndon Johnson, cancels the air cover. As the men are being cut to ribbons on the beaches, Curtis LeMay, who is a hater of Lyndon Johnson, a hater of John Kennedy, goes to him and says, there is only one way to save the day here, and that's to send in the Air Force. And Kennedy refuses because it would blow America's cover. Remember, this is not supposed to look like an American invasion of Cuba.
So I interviewed a survivor of the Bay of Pigs about a year ago in Miami, and said exactly what you said, that the air power never came. So why was that order not provided?
Because I think that the Pentagon was itching for a war with Russia, and I think that this was supposed to be the provocation for it. I would say secondarily, this is kind of a strange twist. As you know, Kennedy's body was taken to Parkland Hospital, but although Texas law requires an autopsy in the state of Texas anytime there's a murder, there was a standoff between the Texas Rangers and the Secret Service, and Kennedy's body was removed at gunpoint from Texas. I don't believe that Kennedy's body is on Air Force One. I believe Kennedy's body is put on Air Force Two, Johnson's plane, and gets to Washington prior to Air Force One. Now, everybody has seen the famous photo of Lyndon Johnson being sworn in on Air Force One. Jackie Kennedy, who's heavily tranquilized at that point, her dress still splattered in blood, standing next to him. First of all, notice the large grin on the face of Lady Bird Johnson. But secondarily, Johnson, in the newsreel footage, winks at one of his segregationist Texas congressional cronies who's standing in the crowd. Here's the point. There was no reason for this ceremony. The Vice President of the United States becomes president immediately upon the certification of the death of the president. Lyndon Johnson called Attorney General Bobby Kennedy back in Washington and said, hey, Bobby, look up the oath of office for me because I'm going to take the oath. This was Johnson's way of sticking the knife into Kennedy and twisting it. He was a sadistic piece of garbage. He was a true sadist. I mean, he was a functioning lunatic. If you read my book, The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ, which is a New York Times bestseller. By the way, you can just go to themanwhokilledkennedy.com, themanwhokilledkennedy.com, and get your copy. I took this book to 6 publishers. They all told me it would never be a commercial success. It was a New York Times bestseller within 2 weeks of its publication. You want to avoid the hard, if you go to Amazon, you can get it there as well, but you want to avoid the hard copy version because the paperback edition has 3 extra chapters. What I think comes up next to answer your question is, now I hope we will have a closer examination of the murder of Senator Robert F. Kennedy, because the government's version of that is equally flawed. Sirhan is always in front of Robert Kennedy. He gets off at least 8 shots, all of which are accounted for. None of them hit Robert Kennedy. According to Thomas Noguchi, one of the most respected pathologists and the longtime Los Angeles County medical examiner, Robert Kennedy was shot at point-blank range with the barrel of the gun right up against his skin in his left rear of his skull. Therefore, he could not have been shot by Sirhan. Eugene Thane, a Filipino who was hired as a security guard only weeks before the assassination and flew back, returned to Philippines immediately after the assassination, is believed to be the man who actually killed Robert F. Kennedy. The good news is Anna Paulina Luna is on this case. Robert Kennedy Jr., Bobby, a good friend of mine, gave a terrific interview about this with Mike Tyson, of all people, which was up on YouTube for approximately 10 minutes before they took it down. But if you look for it, you can find it.
So I have to ask you, this begs the question. I want to ask this, then I want to ask you about Nixon. But so we just had an assassination, very similar. 3 days later, it ends. No more investigation. The spine of steel, similar to the magical bullet that you talked about. Very similar type situations. The cover up. I mean, there's a lot coming out on different outlets about what happened there. Any thoughts?
Yeah, quite a bit. First of all, I saw a piece by Gerald Posner yesterday. Now, for those who don't know, Gerald Posner, who's a friend of mine and a very smart guy, he's written an excellent book on 9/11, but his book on the Kennedy assassination, Case Closed, is is a ridiculous joke. He's the last person alive who actually believes Lee Harvey Oswald, acting alone, killed John F. Kennedy. He wrote a piece yesterday insisting that Tucker Carlson is essentially irresponsible for continuing to ask questions about Thomas Matthew Crooks, the man who they tell us was the assassination or the attempted assassin of President Donald Trump. They tell us that he had no social media footprint. That turns out to be false. They tell us that he could not that they could not break into his encrypted phone, but he had as many as 5 phones. The FBI had no trouble getting into my encrypted phone when I was arrested in the Russian collusion hoax. Why are they having problems with Crooks? Why the rush to hose down the roof from which he shot, unless, of course, you want to make sure there's no DNA test?
And cremate the body.
And why cremate the body almost immediately?
Yeah.
Now, as many people know, I got a tip from somebody in Pennsylvania law enforcement that the shooter was not Crooks, but a man named Matthew Yurick. I did a quick search. Matthew Yurick was arrested for violence at a couple of Trump rallies. Now, I am not saying that the killer is Matthew Yurick. I'm asking the question, could the killer be Maxwell Yurick? The tipster who called me, who fears for their job, said in his message, look at the ears. And if you look at the ears of the photos of Thomas Matthew Crooks and the ears of the corpse that's on the top of the building, they do not match. But they do seem to be a match for photos of Maxwell Yurick. And then I asked this question, Todd, where is Maxwell Yurick? Why has he disappeared? No one has seen him. He took down all of his social media and he has literally vanished into thin air. So I'm not making an assertion that he's a killer. I'm asking the question, could he be the killer? I don't accept the idea that this 20-year-old acting alone came this close to killing the future and now president of the United States.
Wow. Well, I guess we'll find out about Charlie Kirk in time because there's a lot coming out there. What about Nixon? What happened to him, in your opinion? You were there.
This is very simple. First of all, the reason that I wrote my book about the Kennedy assassination was because in his post-presidential years, I spent a lot of time. I was working for President Nixon. And one time, as I've told, once he had a couple cocktails, I asked him what really happened in Dallas, who really killed Kennedy. First, he just kind of shivered and said, Dallas. And I said, sure, I'm not really sure what you mean. And he said to me, let me put it this way. Lyndon and I both wanted to be president. The difference was I wasn't willing to kill for it. That's what motivated me to write his book. As he famously said to Pat Buchanan, the Warren Commission is the biggest goddamn hoax in American history. So I think Nixon knew. Nixon was removed for office in the same way, for the same reasons that Kennedy was removed. In Kennedy's case, they used a bloody coup. In Nixon's case, they used a silent coup. If you look at his memoirs, and if you look at the diaries of his chief of staff, H.R. Haldeman, he intended to completely reorganize the national security apparatus to take power away from the CIA. Specifically, in his words, to take power away from unelected bureaucrats who had become a government of their own. Former President Harry Truman, who's the president who signed the CIA into law, wrote an op-ed piece for the Washington Post immediately after the murder of Kennedy, in which he said it was the greatest mistake of his presidency, that the agency which was supposed to have international responsibilities, had gone rogue and was doing illegal things in the United States. That op-ed by a former president of the United States ran for one edition before it was spiked by Ben Bradley, the publisher of the Washington Post, who admits in his biography that he was working for the CIA.
Well, there you go. And the media today. What else, Roger? Anything else you want to get out?
Well, look, I think that this is, as you pointed out, the Charlie Kirk stuff still doesn't add up to me. The point is, we should never be satisfied. We should never just believe that the government is telling us the truth, because whether it is the Tonkin Gulf situation, whether it is the truth about the USS Liberty, where Lyndon Johnson approved an Israeli attack on an American ship in which 38 servicemen died and many others were wounded, as a pretext for war, they intended to blame that attack on the Egyptians. I've written a new chapter for my book on the Kennedy assassination that involves the role of Israel. I've become persuaded, based on new research, that Israel had a problem with John Kennedy. He was opposed to their having nuclear weapons. He was insisting that AIPAC register as a foreign agent in the United States. There is a case to be made that Israel does have involvement in Kennedy's assassination. People will have to wait until the new chapter is published, but that will be coming shortly.
So the book is The Man Who Killed Kennedy, The Case Against LBJ by Roger Stone. You can find it anywhere. Roger, thank you. We'll have you back again down the road. And thanks to the audience for joining us on Saturday.
Great to be with you. It's a very special day. We pray for President Kennedy and his family. This is the beginning, in my view, of the deep state takeover of the United States. I date it to November 22nd, 1963. Thanks, Todd.
Thank you. We'll see you Monday, 10 to noon, Monday through Friday on the SCIF Eastern. Sorry, I was on mute there. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you enjoyed the week with your family for the holidays. We'll be live tomorrow and then back live Monday after Thanksgiving, spending some well-deserved time with our family, and our team needs a rest because we have been working really hard to get the news out that you need to hear. So we'll see you tomorrow, live 10 a.m., Monday through Friday Eastern on the SCIF.